Hello.
Welcome along. Hello, Chris. We are live immediately. My apologies to any to viewers due to the fact that we had technical issues with YouTube. We couldn't start quite on time, but here we are 17 minutes past the hour. That's still better than most live sports coverage these days. So you join us today with myself, Alex. We've also got Rick and Chris along for the ride. And we're going to be talking about 2 or possibly 3 items, depending upon what comes up in the discussion, based on recent articles and other things we've noticed in the news. So without further ado, as we started a little bit late, our most recent article will be the first item up for discussion. And that was by our comrade Rick here, regarding a matter of an indoor market in Liverpool, which if you grew up in any working class area, indoor markets kind of part of the geography, really essential geography of every place in Britain. So Rick, why don't you introduce the article, say why you wrote it, and what the issues are that, as you see it, that you were trying to get to.
Hello everyone, sorry about the technical difficulties, but we're here now live from Twitter. And yeah, what you said there, Alex, is right, isn't it? It just seemed like there was some form of indoor market everywhere. They were a big part of the shopping experience in most cities, really, wasn't they? And you're saying the indoor market now, Liverpool's indoor market, St. John's, what we're going to go speak about now, was one of the most modern and up-to-date one when it was first built. Because at first it was all street markets, weren't they? And they built this indoor facility for the market to work from. Now, if you've been to Liverpool, if you're from Liverpool, or if you're just from the surrounding area, you'll know St. John's. St. John's had its own precinct for years, as I said. And then in the 60s, they tore that down, the old building, and then they gave away the land for a precinct to be built, St. John's precinct. With the market going upstairs, and it still flourished for years until when was the date? It was not too long ago, was it? It was about 3 weeks ago. It was closed overnight. The traders come in overnight, and they the traders come in of a morning, should I say, to see a signpost on the door, everything blocked off, that the market was no longer open for trade, and all the traders just had to go home, had to bite the bullet and walk off. Now, this has been an ongoing issue that's come to this. If you speak to any traders, they updated the market in 2016, I think. Something like that along those lines. Sorry, I can't get the article. They updated the market and completely changed it from what was a warm, bustling, even though it was at the top of an arcade, it was a shopping arcade. It was still a busy place and somewhere where everyone would go. But they changed it to this modern style that they wanted to pursue, which was, I think it was quite bright white. I remember going in there with my wife. As I said in the article, we hadn't been in there since it had been upgraded, and I think it was just after the lockdowns. We walked in, and it was clinical, and it was all the shutters were down, not all of them, most of them. So it felt daunting. So we walked out. So I'm guessing that was what everybody felt when they walked into this new style market. From what I hear, some of the reasons why they created it, they would have great shutters. Everything could be kept all nice and safe, up-to-date toilets, all, the brand new things to make the market better. And none of it bloody worked. The shutters themselves, as I heard, sorry, everyone, I will cough a bit. I've been a bit sore throat. The shutters would stick and they wouldn't close. Some people just left them open or left them closed if they weren't carrying on trading. The toilets flooded, causing some damage. Some serious damage, especially to a clothing retailer that was local to the locality, was close to the toilets. The lifts didn't work, so right then you've got it's a fair old walk up. So then you're taking away half your traders, aren't you, with the more elderly or infirm. So add that to lockdowns, and St. John's just went downhill, didn't it? All the traders stopped taking any real profit. So the council and the traders decided that they would stop the rent during these troubling times of COVID, which is fine. And then when it come back to normality, there was still a real downfall of foot traffic. So the traders said that they wanted to keep the market rent at proper price instead of the mass amount that was being paid. And Liverpool County Council, Liverpool City Council, should I say, just refused to meet them as a collective. They wanted to meet them singular, separate them, help them able to break them apart, and the usual tricks that management do to separate the workforce. There was even offers of paying an incident fee. None of it was taken up. And this is from what all the traders have been saying. They did try to speak to them until this. And now city centres left without a market. There is the new modern markets, like the red brick market. Now that's all well and good, but it's got records and retro clothings and a tattooist. It's not got butchers, fishmongers. It's not got what a market should have, especially if you read my article. I talk about how the high street is slowly decayed away, and we all know this. We all know this with the multi-conglomerate companies taking it to the retail parks where you've only got the supermarkets, so every little independent shop is being taken away. Bold Street used to be full of independent shops. Now that's a falsehood. You've got like Body Shop and Albert Scholl's. So in times like this, something like a market would be fantastic. People would still want to go and get these things, but they can't get any more. There's no butchers. There's none of these shops. So they've closed this. They've closed the town. The traders have been out demonstrating. Chris has been to one of the demonstrations to try and get it reopened or to do something moved. I'm not sure what the plans and the thoughts are, but what I see is an empty lot at the top of the arcade. Now the shopping precinct is privately owned, and the LCC, Liverpool City Council, rents that top part out. They've got another 60 odd years on it. So they've paid for this, or they are paying for it. I'm not sure which, and it's empty. No one's there at all. So instead of, this is what capitalism does, doesn't it? It doesn't think in long term. Instead of moving some finances around and trying to ignore the loss in massive amount of profit which they thought they were going to earn, they just stopped it. They just completely removed it out the way. They could have. Well, I thought you could have pursued a different avenue. Perhaps maybe gone to a new refit. Maybe just give them a real drop down in price. I don't know. There's plenty of things you could have done, but none of it was taken on board. And now, as you say, we're left without a market in the city centre. And this is happening everywhere, isn't it? Some city centres have got thriving ones, because like Bury. Apparently, I was told that they even offered to show how to do a decent market, how to build it, and that wasn't taken upon. But that might be that's allegedly. So that's where we are with this. In my article, I wanted to show a little bit of the understanding from why this was happening under capitalist Labour councils. Obviously, we don't have no socialist councils and such, but it is just bound to happen. But under a planned economy, we would look to better what is there for the workers, not just seek the profits.
Nice one, Rick. Chris, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, I've got a question for Rick.
Go ahead, mate.
Who owns the building that the markets are rented from, if it's not the council? I don't know that.
There was two companies. I couldn't remember which one. I think it began with P. I should have noted that down. So there's been two private firms. One of them owns different buildings within the city. I'm not sure who owns it now. No, I'm not sure. But one of the things, this market as well, which I didn't mention, the market in Liverpool has been going since the very early 1800s. It was 1822 when they built St John's Market itself before the shopping precinct was built. Do you know it was only 1967 since that Paddy's Wigwam was finished being built? It's only 1854 at St George's, and they are looked at as they looked at pride of place in Liverpool. They looked at it as part of the fabric of Liverpool, basically because they're bloody immovable, aren't they? they're nice things for people to look at as they come in, but the market's part of the fabric of the city as well. So
it is like you said earlier, everywhere needs a market, and it is. Well, I'm sure everyone who's listening now, the fact that somebody owns a patch of land and a building which doesn't produce anything, but then charges rent to people who are selling things what have been produced elsewhere, is quite despicable, especially when they're not even letting those people sell things in the area that they've rented to sell those things.
Yeah.
So we do have to find out who actually owns that. If it's not the council, it's somebody else who does even less for the betterment of society.
So the council's got a let on it for 60 years, did you say, Rick?
Still, they've got 60 odd years left on the letting of the room upstairs.
Yeah, but they don't even own it. Somebody else owns it, and that is just. Well, I presume to everyone who's listening, that is ridiculous. Somebody owns a building, and it's not. They're not even allowing people to sell things that have been produced by other people in this country.
Well,
they're just making an empty building.
That's the model for so-called regeneration in most city centres is only done if it can essentially make profits for private landlords. Like like in Manchester, most of the buildings, a lot of the buildings anyway, that were in places I've worked at, weren't owned by like the government or the public sector. They were operated by, a lot of them were operated by Peel Holdings, which of course is a massive landowner and operator of various different schemes across the country. And they had a lot of councillors in Manchester on their, shall we say, if
payroll.
not payroll, then shall we say maybe expense account. And the way
Christmas
in which
card list.
Yes, and a Christmas card just happens to be filled with expenses, more than a Savoy as well. And the way in which it was done in Manchester, like after the 1996 bombing, was that they talked this big game about, oh well, we're going to make sure that no one's left behind, everybody's accommodated with the new revival. But of course, what happened was they built this shiny new city centre, shiny new Selfridges and Marks and Spencer. Some of the there used to be relatively affordable flats in the city centre, most of which are gone now and replaced by like shiny bullshit. And I say shiny bullshit because like the bits they built 20 odd years ago are now all withering away. Like all of the big shiny shopping centres, of course, because now why would you go to a Marks and Spencer's or a Selfridges when you can get it more choice and cheaper online? So like the high street got killed off, the small shops got killed off by the big shops. Big shops then moved out to industrial parks and or like at the end of industrial estates where they turned into out-of-town retail centres.
They're getting killed off by the internet.
Now they've been killed by Jeff Bezos. So this is what capitalism does to your city centres. Monopolization followed by monopolization followed by death, basically, because it all goes to, now it's all coming from a warehouse in the Midlands somewhere. So like your city centre, they gambled everything on this being like a perpetual growth machine, like a commercial centre. And now it's gone, or it's going.
Yeah.
So like, how is Liverpool going to look when that big shopping centre that they did build in Liverpool 1 gets as drained as customers as the Manchester ones are going to be soon?
I know. Well, we'll just have another Eurovision because that sorted everything out last time.
Yeah. We have a bunch of Stepan Bandera supporters singing an ABBA cover on the docks in Liverpool. That'll be fine.
The company that owns the St George's Precinct, St George's Shopping Centre, is called ANCAP. Rivington,
as in anarcho-capitalism.
maybe, and then Rivington Hark Asset Management, and it's so the St John's Precinct is majority still open. I don't think they've got any empty lots. I know there's one or two by the side of it. Liverpool one itself, or Liverpool city centre, is you're seeing lots more empty lots. A lot of them. One of the things they did with the market, this is what I believe, is they wanted to make it look less and less market-esque and make it look like small shops, tiny shops. And when it becomes that way, when it becomes a small place to like almost a tiny little, what did you say, boutiques?
Yeah.
Little boutiques, little shops, tiny shops. It becomes more pricey, doesn't it? It's not a table thrown down with stuff on top of it and this bit of land. It's the part there that you're renting. You're renting this little box that looks like one of those little what do you call it when you get
kiosk?
The TV show where you opened up the shutters and you bought what was inside. What was that called?
The thing with Des O'Connor.
No. Is that Garage Wars or something?
Something like that. Yeah. It looks similar to that kind of thing what they're in.
But I've been to Chester, their new market, and I would say I don't live in Chester, and people from Chester might argue with me. I don't think their new market is better than the old one. The old one was thriving like the St. John's market was, but the new market in Chester, it looks really fancy. It's got a huge food stall, but it's not selling, like local delicacies. It's selling stuff what you'd try and sell to a tourist. And as well, I don't know what other people listening are going to think about this. They haven't used the toilet space properly. There is a men's toilet, there's a women's toilet, there's a disabled toilet, and there's a massive, I don't know what they call it exactly, a unisex toilet that's got like a circle and a triangle and a pair of devil horns on. And it's basically
what club were you in when you saw this, Chris?
Sorry.
What club was this you were in?
It's not a club, it's Chester Market.
No, I'm joking, mate.
The way, I know you're joking, but people who are listening might not think it was a joke. There's a massive toilet that's basically for anybody, but it's taking up more space than the rest of the toilets there. And if it's for anybody, why can't anybody use the disabled toilet? Or if they've got a willy, use the men's toilet, which has only got 3 urinals in.
Well, that comment got us cancelled by half the internet, but I'm now going to try and sell this podcast to Ben Shapiro and see if we can get some money. So we might as well cash in on the other half of the internet from Chris's comment there.
Can I carry on? Sorry, because I did have a point to make about things that are sold at markets.
Go on, mate.
In the older St. John's markets, we had the fishmongers, and I used to go there, not all the time, because I had to make a trip into town, but I like fish. I like to get fish. They stopped selling it there. And this thing comes up quite a lot of the time about food and what people want. And I'm saying that in inverted commas, what people want. Because what people want is usually what supermarkets are selling to them. And being told you can't buy fish from a market and you'd have to go to Asda, Aldi, Tesco, wherever to get your fish, it is wrong. And I also read an article about something called tamalok, which is a clam from the Philippines, which is being it's being promoted as a sustainable food source because it feeds off wood. So, unlike other farmed fish, you don't need to feed it other smaller fish. So it is actually quite sustainable. But I just think that as much as I'd like to eat that, I'd eat most food as long as it wasn't poisonous. Our wasteful capitalist economy it's got the ability. Well, we as humans have got the ability to source the fish, vegetables, land animals that we need and utilize all of them. But the marketers don't let us do that. They have to try and give you something that, I don't know, is sanitized maybe. Because nobody's going to sell you a naked clam from the Philippines. As much as it'll be tasty and nutritious, they'll have to market it and call it something like, I don't know, fish nugget and batter it. But round our own rivers and seas, if we had an actual control over what happened there, we could catch all different kinds of fish. We could eat all different kinds of fish at different times of the year. We could eat different vegetables at different times of the year, what we've grown on the land. We could eat all different parts of a farm animal instead of seeing a farmed animal as a source of profit. Just see it literally, it's a source of food. And instead of sending, for example, most of a sheep to France and then buying lamb legs from New Zealand to because people apparently demand lamb legs. I've never seen a protest saying where are our lamb legs. I don't think there is a demand. There's just an expectation which has been created by supermarkets and the people who work for supermarkets who do no productive work and just trick people into thinking that what they want is what they actually want when it isn't, or tricking them into thinking what they need. Sorry, I ranted a bit there.
No, that's fine, mate. Just wanted to yeah, by the people that you say that do no work, you mean the people outside of the supermarket itself, the people that
The
do
advertisers,
all the advertising and such.
Yeah.
Whereas the people who stock the shelves are just people like us doing the same jobs,
Yeah.
aren't they?
I didn't for a second mean the people who worked in supermarkets.
I know he didn't.
The people who work for the bosses of the supermarkets.
Well, the thing I brought to mind when you brought up that story, Chris, was this talk of sustainable food sources. Because, like, what you need to qualify, well, what makes something sustainable from a capitalist point of view is not the same as what would make it sustainable from the working class's point of view. Sustainable for a capitalist is that, in terms of food, is like you were saying, Chris. They can get this, whatever it's called, from the Philippines, and they can produce it in as cheap a manner as possible, and they can have it on the shelves and sold at as high a profit as possible. Now, like you've just been saying, if we actually had a planned economy in this country, we could actually look at, well, what do people actually need for proper nutrition all year round, and plan accordingly as to what could be grown here, what could be produced here. You don't need to go to the Philippines for a fish. You really don't.
No, you don't.
Unless, of course, your idea is, well, it's ultra cheap to pay Filipino fishermen or fish farmers to get this thing. We as capitalists would rather do that than actually appropriately fish in the seas of the territorial waters of Britain, which is still full of fish. It's just that various different stocks got fished out due to commercial pressures. And again, the reason why the fishing fleets got shut down was because of commercial pressures and deals with other capitalist powers in the European Union. And then the other thing is, just to throw this in at the end, they still do intensive fishing. They just get African fishermen to do it for them, rather than in the coaster, rather than having it done by a domestic fishing fleet here. So all the exploitation, they're just looking to offshore it, and then they can bring in something ultra cheap to flog to workers. And like, we're not that far away from a time when, like, my parents' generation, like, who were born in like late 40s, they grew up with like seasonal foods being available. Like, you couldn't get like a strawberry at a certain time of the year. It didn't suffer for it, We don't really gain that much by, hyper exploiting Peruvian workers so you can get grapes 24/7. We're not really gaining that much out of
that. It's the same with every single piece of produce you see in a supermarket. If you buy a tomato in December, it doesn't taste nice. It doesn't taste of anything. Because it's out of season. It's not even in the season in the country we buy it from. It's not in the season in the Netherlands. It's been made in a lab in Rotterdam. But it's the way people get it into their heads, or it's put into their heads. You want a cheese and tomato butty whenever you want. That makes you free.
Yeah.
So you might as well just have a hologram of a tomato and cheese butty.
Don't give them ideas, Chris.
We're going to get from it. Well, they're listening to them all. They're listening to us all the time anyway, so they probably know everything we've said.
Yeah. If you can self-identify into a new gender, they can identify you as having eaten when you're actually not. We've identified you as a fully fed person. Now get back to work.
Yeah, you're not hungry. You are not hungry. You are sleepy. You are sleepy. You'll wake up tomorrow, ready for work.
Go to fucking work. Put your Eurovision hits on. Move faster.
Mamma mia. Back to work again.
Oh, God. If we're going to do karaoke, lads, this is going to be a very long evening.
No, we won't do karaoke.
You got to tune into a special edition for that one. But thanks to all 113 of you who are watching on Twitter right now. That's a good turnout there, everybody. If you've got a question,
has anyone replied to it? Sorry.
I was going to say, Chris, if you've got a question and you're watching, just reply to the tweet that this video is on, and it'll show up on the software we're using here. Because we're not getting it. We usually get the comments from YouTube, but YouTube is knackered today, apparently. So we just got to go through X. So no comments so far, but either reply to the tweet and they'll show up on here. Another question I had was just to throw to you two as we discuss further, drawing up off on the food question and the so-called regeneration question. Like, it seems that the way in which the situation is going now is that again, to draw on the sustainability question for the capitalist class in Britain, clearly they've got in mind that they're going to try and push or hold wages down for much longer now because of the crisis they're in. And so to go back to what Chris was saying, they are going to be looking for the cheapest food sources possible to give to the working class to make it look as if you haven't lost as much as you have. We've mentioned this before. It's an old trick. The British ruling class were doing this as early as the 1850s. If you can find cheaper sources of food from anywhere in the world and then give them to people whose wages have already been cut, you can make the cut look like less. If you can find really cheap sources of food, you can make them feel as if they're earning more. It's an old trick which they're going to try more of. And like the other point about this is, as we go further into the crisis, just how few ideas the ruling class has that are even new. So the old idea, feed them worse food and get it cheaper from anywhere else in the world. The other idea, why do we revive the economy? Reinflate the property bubble. That because we had the crash in 2008. Property prices went down slightly, but if you look at it, both for individual properties for people to buy or rent, or commercial property, to draw on what you were talking about, Rick, about the market, the rents went right up again straight after the crash. So, and now you've got Starmer and Sunak going to go into this election, both saying we're going to revive the economy. How? We're going to make housing more affordable. How? We're going to get everybody to take out more loans. So the solution through now 15, 16 years of crisis is more debt, pile more debt on people to buy more housing, pile more debt to actually accumulate more debt to in so-called regeneration schemes. And then when nobody can pay anything off, feed them worse food that you get from God knows where. And they've run out of ideas, clearly. They've run out of ideas on the local level, be it Liverpool, Manchester, wherever. They've run out of ideas on the national level. It's just literally remix the same thing all over again. And they wonder why people don't vote, or that you're going to get like a very, very patchy vote turnout. Because even if people don't understand things in the way that we do, people know they're getting stiffed. And that's why there's so many people who are saying, just, well, fuck it.
Well, I'd argue against you there, Alex. They haven't run out of ideas. This was their idea all along. Everyone is so apathetic that they're happy to just take out constant loans and eat the worst shite that is put on a plate in front of them. And the ruling class have won. Unless more people realise that that's what they're doing.
I think to add to that, though, the problem being is it's affecting the ruling class themselves, isn't it? With people running out of money, with people not being able to continue on there, you start with the likes of people couldn't afford the houses, so you started putting in mortgage schemes. People couldn't afford to purchase the higher purchases, so you started with credit cards, easier access loans. Then people started struggling to afford getting a Just Eat, so they put it on the Clear Pay, as I mentioned before. So all these things come into play where they're just slowly and surely degrading us, till we are to the point of where we literally can't afford anything. We get into amounts of debt and nobody's paying off this debt. It's never going to happen. So the whole economy is on this bubble of debt, which just doesn't exist. Because when people get to the point where they can no longer afford it, that's not going to pay it, are they? You can't look at everybody because they owe money. It just doesn't happen. So you get all these schemes now where they write off debt because they know people can't afford it. So it becomes like a false economy, essentially. So is it talking about how things are changing? There's something I noticed. Bought a shop in Aldi since it got popular, to be honest. And I remember not too long ago, mince, which is a terrible cuts of meat. I used to work in a meat processing plant. I used to get a block of it like that. And it used to be about £2.40. Go back about 8 years ago, just £2.40. And then in the last 3 years, it just skyrocketed and it's like £4 for this block of mince, which is people who haven't got a lot of money. A block of mince you can make like a larger dish with. It's an easy thing to make food with. Spag bowls, shepherd's pies, etc., etc.
Sorry, Rick. What weight are you talking about for £4?
I don't know, mate. It's the larger rectangular one. I don't know the exact weight.
It's 500 grams.
Yeah, something like that. Anyway, went in there the other day. They made the smaller ones. The smaller ones are still at the price of the larger ones used to be. Now there's all of a sudden, the same size as the last one, completely labelless, and it's about £1.80. So what has that mint got to have in it to be the worst one? That's
mostly sawdust.
Yeah, that's got to be the wood that your fish were eating.
Yeah, the fish have shit it out, and now it's gone into the mint.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. But
it might be like, the way they make kebabs out of rats and boots. It might be the bits left over from that.
Could be the bits left over from the kebab.
Yeah. The crusty ends of rats and boots.
Yeah.
They luxury kebab, them, man.
So yeah, we're just it's getting to the point where we can't afford a single thing, can we? The wages increase by slight percentages, no matter how many big shouts there are about wage wins. They're not increasing to be in line with any kind of inflation, because you're not encountering the inflation from yesteryear, are you? It's almost historic wins. So we're suffering unsurmountable, and it cannot continue, especially when there's countries out there that are showing the way that that this can happen. Even under capitalism, there's countries that are thriving better than we are, but we are at the later stage as the oldest capitalist country.
But like what you were saying about how it's harder and harder for ordinary people to afford things, and you said as well the ruling class is suffering. I don't think they are suffering that much. They're still all right, and they just keep bringing in more and more enemies to try and distract us workers from who the real enemy is. So they could say that a worker on the minimum wage, they could say that your enemy is homeless because he doesn't work at all.
Well, they do say that, don't they? Like
they do, I mean,
yeah.
And then they could say, "Oh, right, so your mates with the homeless now. Now we've got an asylum seeker who's homeless, a brown homeless. Have a go with him. He doesn't even look like you."
Well,
they'll just keep making up worse and worse enemies, and they're always going to be all right.
Well,
the only time they're not going to be all right is when we're right up in their faces and we're telling them they're not all right. You're not going to be all right anymore. We need to be all right.
Well, I would say, I mean, I agree with your point there, Chris. The British ruling class have been at this since the days of, before capitalism itself. But in the formation of the working class, they always made sure that the so-called native English, the Welsh, and the Irish were all kept in different bits of Manchester, and I'm sure different bits of Liverpool as well. And then the English were told to hate the Irish because they were coming over and working for less. And they've been at that ever since. But I mean, I know you two know this already, but just for the benefit of anybody who's viewing, I mean, there's been moments in our history where we've got over that. The point is that we're not going to get over it by trying to go down like old methods of organizing or sticking with stupid ideas that didn't work 30 years ago or traditional trade union methods of organizing, because there's been traditional trade union methods of organizing that were as racist as anything in the ruling class. Like you'll remember those articles we've got on our site about some of the things that trade union leaders have gotten up to over the years, where they've pandered to divisions in the working class to get their tiny little bit of the working class a slightly better deal. And that's like part of the history of so-called British trade unionism. And we got ditched that for a fucking start. The other part of it is that we as a class have got to understand that now it's not just a matter, like, I don't know if you guys saw this, but like about 10, 15 years ago when the crisis was on, you got this big cry out coming out from like reformers saying, "I'll make the rich pay more tax," which never works because the rich have got the rich literally control the big accountancy firms like Deloitte, who sit on the board of HMRC, who decide what HMRC does. So when there's a big tax clamp down, the guy who's like a sole trader or a small business guy, he'll get hammered for screwing up his tax return. The BP, Shell, Microsoft won't ever, because they've got a legion of lawyers that will help them get around it. So to make this point, because when people say, "Oh, we've got to tax the rich more," no, I don't agree with that. What you got to do is you got to end the rule of the rich completely. It's not just a matter of taking a bit off them. It's like all the rich in this country own all the productive land, and they've taken some of the productive land and made it unproductive by turning it into sports grounds and hunting grounds. So take that off them. Take all the industries that they've taken over and leached off. Like we've seen the collapse of Southwest Water, that's ongoing, because essentially they privatized a fairly decently functioning part of the utility system and leached off it for 30 years, didn't invest anything, then it collapsed. So like this is a parasite class. Like it had a historic role at one point, it doesn't have it anymore. Now, what the working class needs to understand is it's not just a matter of a little bit of reform here or there. They had tried that with Jeremy Corbyn, that didn't work. So now it's like got to take it all off them. All the money, all the land, all the industry, all the power. Because if not, then what's the future for the next few generations? It's going to be uninterrupted slide, because they're just going to make sure that the lives of the working class get slowly and slowly worse and worse and worse, or very rapidly worse, depending upon the depth of the crisis, whilst they, as long as they are kept in their position. And putting out a petition to say, pay more tax, rich people, please. That's about as threatening as, cobbing a wet flannel at somebody. So now I think what our job is, we've got to make people understand, no, that life in this country doesn't have to be this way, but there's a tiny group that run everything and own everything, and you have to remove them from power. Until we do, we're stuck.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Alex. And to put what you just said in a shorter sentence, we need to end the rich.
There you go. That end the rich. We'll just make a T-shirt out of that.
Not eat and
no, I wouldn't want to eat.
It's like
I don't mean that as a joke, and I'm not advocating murder, by the way.
No, but, they can join a new productive society. They can play a part. They'll give them a chance.
They just stop being the rich.
Yeah,
they become the same as everybody else, the workers.
Yeah, or they can go into exile in Florida.
Except no, because the poor of Florida need to make sure there's no rich of Florida.
That's true.
So they can carry on existing as humans, but just not as rich. The state of rich needs to go. That is the only way.
Yeah. Sorry, didn't mean to cut across you there. Like you're saying there, when you're talking about petitions and such to try and push for the capitalists to act right, for the ruling class to act right. It's like, it's like threatening somebody with something when he's got a gun to your head. You've got nothing. Until you fight back, have you? You can't. The reforms won't work. Doesn't matter how many times and how many actions that you produce, which you believe will push for society to be better within the system that currently exists. It just won't happen. We know now. The reforms of yesteryear, the at the years of 45 to 51 under Labour, those reforms that people want to call it socialist, it certainly wasn't. We've mentioned this so many times that those reforms were to quell any sort of revolutionary spirit or any anger, and a lot of military trained people coming back from wars where they've seen how countries can work in different ways. How they've fought alongside Red Army soldiers who probably told them all about the Soviet Union's and how that was increasing and the socialist bloc within the world. So at that point, those reforms were put in place to stop you seeking them, because look, you can have a bit of it here. And then since then, they've just slowly clawed every single bit of it back. Yeah. And it'll never happen again. Not once. It'll never happen again.
Just that much. Yeah, no. And now you've got that much.
Yeah.
And it's gone. It's even, I think people listening to this might know already, but if they don't, even the NHS, which is a big thing that everybody likes, they started selling that off about 4 years after it was founded to fund the war against socialism in Korea. That's when they brought in the dental charges and prescription charges in 1953, I think. Yeah. Am I correct?
50.
And that was used to wait. 51, was it?
Yeah, it lasted. I mean, it lasted barely 4 years as a totally free service, and then it was Labour that brought in dental and prescription charges. As you say, Chris, to kill peasants fighting for independence and socialism.
Yeah, and that's despicable. It's absolutely despicable. But that's like it's more than 2 generations away from us now. It's about 3 or 4. So it seems like ancient history, but it's not. It's stuff what's affecting us right now. And it's affecting everybody in the world. because our country is still acting like that, no matter who we voted for. It's acting like it's still an imperial power, and it's treating us workers like we are just cogs in the machine of that power. And it is absolutely disgraceful that happens, and it's not in the least bit surprising, because we've all seen the way the media works. It's not in the least bit surprising that nobody accepts that that's what's happening. Nobody believes it. Everybody needs to be told that's what's going on. And that's not a conspiracy theory. It's literally how our country works.
Yeah, it's a lot of people. I think more people now are alive to the fact that things aren't right. I think a lot of people are aware that things aren't right, but they don't understand why. Like, I mean, we all saw like the discussion over like Southampton's finest, Matt Letizia, saying, "Did you know that there's programs to control the weather?" And he's right, there is. On like a small scale, like citywide, or like in a certain area, they can either stop it raining or make it rain more. They can't do it on like a massive countrywide scale. But it reflected the fact that like he's a guy, I think he's being honest. He's trying to make sense of a world which doesn't seem correct. And a lot of people, especially during the COVID thing and immediately afterwards, are seizing on all kinds of things that don't seem right and trying to make a whole theory out of it. Like you hear this a lot on like radio phone and stuff like that. People phone up, the host goes, "Oh, what, do you believe in aliens and like shape-shifting lizards as well?" And I don't blame people that do, because it does seem like that the people who actually own and run the country are a different species, because certainly they've got nothing in common with the average person. So I don't blame anybody who looks at them and thinks, well, these are all shape-shifting lizards, because what you can't, as a person who's not actually had a political education, because nobody gets a political education, you look at that and think, well, how can they be making these decisions which are making my life worse, my family's life worse, the life of my community worse? How can anybody be such a sociopath? And this is why we need to raise the level of political education, because without it, people are going to get angry, like Chris was saying, about what's going on, but they're going to run down all these blind alleys chasing shadows, and nobody's stepping forward other than like we're doing our small bit here. There's various other people who are, but people will get fed a new line of bollocks to explain all the things that are happening to them by professional con artists unless things get organized properly.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, definitely agree with that. I think it's the fact that you hear this idea that there's lizard men or some kind of reptilian species ruling the world, because the ruling elite, the bourgeoisie, so far removed from us that it's almost impossible for some people to understand how this could occur without a political education, without even the semblance of a political education, without the smallest of understanding. I can't say that I'm the greatest understanding of all politics, but once you start to go down a simple road as such, you start to realize how these things happen. So when the people are saying lizard men, they're not really, like you say, they're not completely incorrect, because as we say in Liverpool, they are flipping lizards, aren't they? You know what I mean? So yeah, the changes have got to happen, haven't they? No matter what we do, what we say, the change got to happen. And without revolutionary theory, there's no revolution, is there?
Exactly. And with that, do you lads mind if I just drop in the mention of the Sharon Graham article that I wrote recently? For those who aren't aware, and we got a hello from Paul McCord, by the way, who says on Twitter that he's watching. And the readout is telling me there's 164 people watching on Twitter right now or listening. So that's a pretty good turnout. That's actually better than we got last time. So recently, I wrote an article for the website about the leader of Unite, a certain Sharon Graham, who was applauded by what I'm going to call like the institutional left in Britain when she was running. She was portrayed as a grassroots candidate. Even though she wasn't, she's a career bureaucrat. been in the United bureaucracy for a very long time, and was going to be this breath of fresh air after the Len McCluskey era. And she was going to stand up to that evil old Keir Starmer and give him what for. None of that actually happened. Turns out, and this is why I wrote the article, her strategy of saying, oh, we're not going to do politics amounts to essentially mild complaints to Keir Starmer whilst remaining wholly committed to funding the Labour Party. And now it's basically lecturing anybody who wants to stand up for solidarity with the Palestinians, who dares to, say, take action by blockading like one of the Elbit arms factories or one of the other arms factories that are supplying weapons to Israel, which Lord Cameron has said recently, the weapons sales will continue, even though their own legal advice, government legal advice, has told them that Israel's committing genocide. So they're going to continue to sell it, because what better customer to sell weapons to is there than a guy who's committing a genocide? And so Sharon Graham chose an internal Unite circular to her officials to basically say, we will not get back actions that target our members, even though what these people are doing, they're not targeting the workforce. They are peacefully demonstrating outside of a factory that's intimately involved with what we were talking about earlier, which is the processes of British imperialism. Now, we as whatever we call ourselves, communists, socialists, whatever, don't want to see anybody put out of work, but nor do I, and the reason why I wrote this, find it adequate that all a trade union leader will do when this situation arises, where one element of the global working class is getting literally bombed and murdered, whilst another element of the working class in our country helps to make the equipment to do that. And to say that, oh, well, there's nothing we can do, we just support our members, that's like an astonishingly unethical and immoral viewpoint. And if we're going to build actual class consciousness in this country, and we're going to move towards a level of awareness in the working class whereby it's not just about having a job and getting more money, it's about the fact that we want to run society. We want to design the way that work is conducted, what work is conducted, what is made here, how we design the education system to get people into those workplaces. That's what we want to do. The Unite leadership's mentality, like the mentality of every trade union leadership, whether it's supposedly on the left or supposedly on the right, is, well, we're just going to make sure that you keep your job and that's it. But that's not enough. We've spent the last 45 minutes talking about why this country is not only on the slide for workers, but it's going to remain on the slide. The strategy of the union leaders, all of them, not just Sharon Graham, all of them, is, well, we're going to defend this group of workers over here for a little bit, maybe. But then you look at like what their so-called wins are on pay. Rick, you were talking about it earlier. It amounts to basically getting about 5% in most cases, or like 15% over a 3 or 4 year period. When in actual fact, as we've all said, the inflation rate has been such, going up like 6 or 7 and 8%, that like prices have gone up so far, your 5% raise is already gone because the prices haven't come down. So they're boasting about getting a raise of 5%, when in actual fact, what it really is about a 3 or 4% cut because prices have gone up so quickly. And that's the quality of the trade union leadership in this country, defending British imperialism and pretending that like some paltry pay increase, which gets wiped out immediately by price increases, is a big win. And that's like your grassroots trade union leader now. That's what the British left got invested in defending and is still defending now. And we did get, of course, some criticism from perhaps an admirer of General Secretary Graham. And I'll say, if that person who wrote in criticizing the article is watching now, feel free to write your criticism to me personally, or feel free to express the views that you've expressed, perhaps in a debate format, in a format of your choice. I'm happy to discuss it. But I'll conclude on just saying this, that we can't be satisfied with this anymore. It's not good enough for the class and the whole country that the supposed working class organizations are this pathetic and led this badly and prepared to give these cheap excuses and completely selling out every time there's a serious chance to actually oppose anything. And like, we've got to stop this mentality of like hero worshipping people like Mick Lynch and Sharon Graham, both of whom are leading the working class or trying to lead the working class back into the fucking Labour Party again. which is the more effective evil for the capitalist class now, because they'll do the things that the Tories now are too weak and too despised to do. So I'll leave it there. But if my critic wants to come back at me for any of this, I welcome the opportunity for dialogue. Don't know if either of you comrades have got any thoughts on any of
that. I'd just say myself and I presume everyone in the group, we always welcome questions, criticism, and open debate. We're not trying to shut anyone down or cancel them. We've got valid points to make. And if anyone doesn't agree with them, they're welcome to say so and explain why. And then we'll explain why.
Yeah. Rick?
Yeah. I think that sounded. I don't need to parrot anything anyone said there. I think that's a good part to end it on now.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We have 197 people watching us on Twitter right now, which I'm convinced actually does better than some of the shit they put on ITV in the mornings. So thanks to everybody who's tuning in there. Well, I don't know if we're on out and deck levels just yet, but then again, I'm convinced that all their ratings are actually made up. Nobody actually likes them too, do they?
I think they're made up.
What, CGI?
I think the whole monkey lie.
They were grown by TV executives in the test tube. All right, so we are now at 1:15. Thanks to all 197 who have tuned in. It's excellent to have you all along. My apologies for the lack of YouTube tonight, and lack of comments therein. But we'll try and solve that issue for the next time. But it's good to have had so many of you come along, and we promise to be back again in a couple of weeks. So, any final comments from Chris or Rick?
No.
Thanks for everybody here, and we will hopefully have all work in order for a fortnight's time. Oh, demonstration on Sunday. If anybody's in Liverpool, demonstration on Sunday. Palestine, march from the Metropolitan Cathedral. We will be there. Come and say hello.
We shall indeed. All right, 200. We finished on the 200 number. Thanks to everybody who's watched this. The video will be uploaded on the YouTube page later on, so you can watch it there. Thanks to my comrades, Chris and Rick, and we'll be back with you in a couple of weeks.
Right. God bless you. Ta-ra.